Welcome back to KLEAN Radio. It's a show about addiction, recovery, and really the amazing life that you get when you get sober. And I can't think of two better people to be in the studio tonight with me than Zoe Tryon, who is an anthropologist, got sober when she was 21 years old, and Elisa Hallerman, who I thought got sober when she was 21 years old, because that's because you look 31. And welcome back to KLEAN Radio. And I'm not saying that, by the way. I mean, you do not look your age.
Thank you.
Has that been a problem? Do people ever think?
No, it's not a problem. It's a gift.
That's a gift.
It's a gift of recovery.
That is a gift of recovery. You don't know how to ever ask that question, but let's get back to Patrick.
Yes.
And let's find out how Patrick's doing.
Patrick wants to do with your life.
Patrick, what is it that we're all waiting? What is it that you want to do with your life, Patrick?
Well, I haven't come to that conclusion in just a week. That's a pretty big question, but
we were totally kidding.
Yes.
No, I do know. I enjoy being sober because I can actually enjoy things in life. I can remember them. It's funny because every time I've called the last 5 or 6 weeks, I was drunk, so I had to go back 2-3 days later when you posted on YouTube and actually watch it again because I didn't know what I said.
And that's actually frightening in a sense, because I used to black out. I mean, I one time, and this is no joke, I called up my sister. I was living in Florida. I called her up in Israel, and she's like, "Why do you keep calling me? We have had the same conversation 7 nights in a row." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" I did not remember calling her.
Oh dear.
And I mean, that's what happens when we, people. I was talking to somebody the other day. It's very hard with alcoholics and addicts because we do a lot of bad things sometimes when we're drinking and using that we don't necessarily mean, but we've done it.
Mm-hmm.
Patrick,
mm-hmm.
I want to hear how your week was, and I want to hear what was hard about it.
Well, to be honest, I think the hardest thing about it was the boredom. When Friday came along and there was nothing to do, I think that was the hardest part about it.
So what'd you do?
I went to sleep.
Okay.
I will say this does come up. I work with a lot of young people in recovery in their early 20s, and I think one of the most common things that I hear is, I'm bored. And I think that I'm bored and I have nothing to do, or I'm uncomfortable being alone, are all very different things. And it's about feeling comfortable and learning to relax and be in the silence, and that's not necessarily being bored. And I also think it is about, I know for me, when I was first asked when I was sober, what are your interests, what are your likes, what are your dislikes, what are your hobbies?
It was like a dating questionnaire.
I had no idea.
Right.
I had no idea what I liked. I didn't have any authors that I liked. I didn't have any, films that I had just seen. I didn't have a favorite food. I didn't have a spiritual practice. I didn't know anything about anything. And so I think it's, instead of feeling like you're bored, it's almost like let yourself feel excited that you have this whole world that is now opened up to you that you will actually remember.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing. You could create new memories. You could create new experiences. When I used to say to people, I'm bored, and they would say, you know why? And I'd go, no, why? And they'd go, because you're boring. And I remember when a person said that to me, I didn't get upset. I was like, you're right. When I was drinking, I was a boring guy. And I had to, the biggest thing I learned when I got sober, and I think all of us could almost relate to this, is I learned how to say yes. People would say, hey, we're going somewhere, and I would say yes. And because I said that yes, I got to experience things I never would have experienced.
Right.
Because I'm preconditioned, Patrick. I'm preconditioned to staying home. You
I
give
think
me,
a lot of us are.
Yeah, and it's like Netflix is like the worst thing to come around the pike for alcohol, because I could literally sit in front of Netflix, call Papa John's, and call it a night. And some people call it isolation. I call it a cheap vacation. And but Patrick, I had to learn, and you're lucky. Like Elisa's saying, you're really lucky right now. Zoe, I mean, the same, very similar.
I mean, I was just thinking two things as well, Patrick. The fact that when you drank and dialed, when you some part of you really wants to be clean and sober because you drank and dialed KLEAN Radio
Yes.
station, which is awesome.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? You didn't drink and dial an ex-girlfriend. Well, you might have done that too, but at least you called KLEAN Radio, which is awesome. So subconsciously, you want to be sober, which I think is really, really exciting.
Yeah, I mean, I've always enjoyed my life when I'm sober. You know, I think I stopped enjoying the getting high and the drinking a long time ago in my mid-teens, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I mean, I've had the best times of my life while I was sober. Of course, I mean, it was just hard for me to justify the whole drinking thing because it's not my drug of choice, and I did have the manageability. I was that what do you call that? I don't know. I was drinking every day, and nothing was going wrong in my life, so it's hard for me to justify putting it down. Even
But Patrick,
though I was spending all my money on it.
Patrick, you just said something very important. You were drinking every day.
Right.
You know, that's a lot of drinking, because I'm guessing you just weren't sipping one beer.
No, not
Right.
really.
And last week you called in. It was actually really cool, right? You poured the 12-pack out.
Yeah, that was incredible.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And so, yeah, sorry, Lisa.
No, I was going to say, Patrick, if you could do anything in the world, you could go anywhere, you could do anything, and fear or money was not an issue, what would you want to do?
Cliff dive in Costa Rica.
That's awesome.
Let's do it.
And let me tell you something. I actually have a really good friend of mine named Biggie who's sober and obviously his nickname, he's Big. And he lives in Costa Rica. He's one of my closest friends, Patrick. I'll tell you what, you ever get sober. I mean, not you ever get sober. You are sober. You ever get enough money together, whatever it is, and you go to Costa Rica, you got a place to stay with Biggie. Okay,
Cool.
and he will do whatever. I mean, the guy is he barters for a living. He literally, he trades things. And I love him. We were on a boat in Mexico together. You could look online. He's just an awesome guy. And I went skydiving in sobriety, Patrick. I'm scared of heights.
I think you should go online. You should start investigating Costa Rica. And for you're in Austin, Texas, right?
Yeah.
So
Well, I'm in a small town outside of Austin.
So you get yourself to Florida,
Yeah.
you get on a plane,
Yeah, it's not.
you fly to
Right.
Costa Rica.
And dream big. And that's what we're saying.
You have to.
We have a woman in the studio tonight, Zoe Tryon, who, and I'm saying this from the bottom of my heart, I've never met her before, but you could she has a lust for life, to quote the great Iggy Pop. And I think all of us in the studio tonight have that thing where we...
I thought you were going to quote Biggie.
No, I'm not going to quote Biggie. Where we all in the studio tonight have that lust for life, that we've grown up in I grew up in a very Orthodox Jewish home, with a lot of confines, but I wanted to live a life, Patrick. You grew up in England and Australia, and you decided to move and just live your life. Elisa was an agent for years with the most amazing firms, and one day she said, I want to live my life. And you've gotten into this amazing profession. Patrick, you going to call us back next week?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Patrick, I'll talk to you on Facebook this week. Elisa will talk to you this week.
Yep, stay in touch.
All right, cool.
And look into trips to Costa Rica, Patrick.
I will.
Okay, cool. By the way, if you just tuned in, you're listening to KLEAN Radio. That's KLEAN with a K. The number here is 888-539-2980. That's 888-539-2980. The calls are really lining up. We're in the studio with Zoe Tryon, anthropologist. You've been sober since you're 21? 17
years.
Sorry, I just said how old you are.
It.
And we're in the studio with Elisa Hallerman, who's doing amazing work with her business called HalleyLife.com. Patrick is one of the people you've been helping, and just give me, because we're like lining up the calls. What do you need? What are case managers? What are you? Is that something he talked about? Patrick is getting sober. He's scared almost to live life.
Mm-hmm.
What's the biggest thing you say to people that are scared to live life?
Well, I think it's more scary not to live life. So what I do is I work with people and try to help them to realize their dreams and take it literally one day at a time, sometimes 1 minute at a time. And
is that a trait in alcoholics or in people with addiction, that they're paralyzed by what they can do, not about what they can't do.
I don't think that's just for alcoholics.
That's just for a lot of people.
I don't think that's for alcoholics. I think that we have fear and we have anxiety, and we're taught sometimes from a young age to, this is how you do it, and that's part of our culture. And I know that that's not the case everywhere, but certainly here it's part of the culture. And those dreams and those fantasies and those inspired thoughts that we had as kids tend to go by the wayside. And so it's about giving people permission to remember what those things were that they wanted to do that really lit them up.
I might have to see you. I mean, it's really great advice you're giving. But we have a call. Let's take Bernard from Bellflower. Welcome to KLEAN Radio, Bernard.
Oh, how you doing today?
Good. How are you?
Where's Bellflower?
It's like 10 minutes away.
Bellflower is near Norwalk. I don't know if you know where Norwalk, near Paramount.
Yeah.
Yeah, around that area, and I'm from Brooklyn, New York, which is...
Hey, my brother from Brooklyn, Bernard.
Yeah, I recognize your voice from that area. Well, what it is, maybe I can contribute something to your younger listeners. Like, I was 14 years old when I started to drink. And, the crowd I ran around with, we went to the park, and we drank in the park, smoked some dope, some marijuana, got high a lot, and then got into gang fights. But the main thing, I think, the reason it was because there was lack of direction, number one, which is what a lot of young teenagers are going through now, and a lack of confidence around your peer group. That's another thing I think was with me. And then there was a bunch of other things. But I drank from I was 14 years old till I was about 25 years old. And then I finally decided to give up smoking, and I decided to give up drinking. And I had my own way of doing it. I gave it up, both of them. And now I have an aversion to both of them, both drinking and smoking.
But you called about your grandson.
Oh, yeah. My grandson now is, for lack of a better word, a pothead. And the reason it is, my daughter married into this family. All of them smoke pot.
Right.
And by extension, my grandson, 16 years old, is now smoking pot and drinking, and addicted to computer shows like Whose Line Is It Anyway? And with all that inane laughing that seems to go along with smoking pot.
Yeah, bad.
The thing is, I recognize in him at 16 what I was at 16.
Mm-hmm.
And the course he's going to have to go through if there's no intervention. And I think my daughter is not sufficiently motivated.
Well, because she's a pothead.
Well, yeah, and so is her husband.
Right, which in really that's lack of motivation. I mean, it's smoking pot takes away. And this isn't the pot, just so people out there that know, we're talking to Bernard, who's talking about his grandson being a pothead. The pot today is about 40% more potent than it was in the 60s.
But I think it's important to also say that the parents are parents and adults, and they can make their own choices as to whether they want to drink alcohol, smoke pot,
but he's 16.
Smoke cigarettes. Mm-hmm. But it's not necessarily the best choice for him. But you've gone through this, Bernard. So what have you talked to him? What does he say to you?
Well, he doesn't say much to me because it's escalating to the point where it was just like if he had a tooth pulled out, he would smoke a joint, and it would take away the pain. And now it's escalated to the point where he does it as a routine.
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't have much to say because if I intervene, what happens is, and probably would have happened when I was young, is that there's animosity that arises, and then anger after that, and then a shutdown, and then all that stuff that goes together with anger and animosity after one tries to intervene without sufficient knowledge.
But I think it goes so much deeper than that, Bernard. Obviously there are issues in the family.